it's about striking the right balance between absolutely having a plan and staying true to the story that you want to tell, staying true to your promise, being bold about it, but being as authentic as you possibly can, having some humility, knowing your place, but also recognizing that there are moments that you can't predict. There's a requirement to be reactive. And so we absolutely do have a plan.
And the masters of credibility.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Masters of Credibility, our podcast. Today, my guest is the really rather awesome Mr. Barney Bailey from AXA. So Barney is Brand and Sponsorship Director for AXA UK. And Barney, if you could tell us a little bit about your role and your responsibilities before we get into interviewing you, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no problems. Look, Rob, it's a pleasure. My role is a really varied one. The role of my team is really broad. So we do brand strategy, a lot of work with the group team, the global team. We're quite a sprawling organization. Brand marketing and communications, media strategy, planning, very much tied to that. Brand governance and training and onboarding for new starters and such like. And sponsorship. An awful lot of our time is consumed working with Liverpool Football Club as the official training partner. So doing a great amount of that. We work across 3 lines of business. And as I alluded to, up into a global team as well. So it's a business that has a lot of breadth. There are customers with varying needs, but fundamentally at their heart, we're about fixing things, fixing their health, their home, their car, problems perhaps with their business. And it's incredibly rewarding when you get it right. But there is a great deal of richness and variety to the day job. No question about that.
Yeah, great. And really good little summary. I think you operate as well in an industry vertical. I think AXA are a particularly credible brand, and Nonsense has played its little part there as well. We've even done one of our brand credibility workshops with you relatively recently. But you do exist in a category where trust can be low. Insurers, I think, get a bit of a raw deal amongst consumers. Would you agree?
I think they do. I think every category of brand has the potential to be distrusted. I think we have a really important role to play in people's lives, and helping individuals, people, businesses is an incredibly rewarding role to play in their lives. And of course, when that doesn't go right, there is the potential for them to challenge us. But as I said earlier, when we get it right, I'm not sure there's a more rewarding category to be involved in. I mean, I think it's really unfair that financial services and insurance in particular is often described as sort of a low interest category, or not terribly sexy. I couldn't disagree more. I think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, the role that we're playing, what we're enabling people and businesses ultimately to do, is a really noble thing. And I think that's it's a really rewarding thing for me to get involved in, for us to deliver. But when it doesn't quite work, when it's not quite right, inevitably that's going to lead to some distrust. But we do everything that we can to not allow that to happen.
Yeah, I think some of those negative stories get disproportionately amplified compared to the amazing stories of the stuff that you fix. Like on a probably hourly basis, AXA is out there fixing various bits of people's lives. But you kind of, people, when it goes well, people like to keep it quiet. You don't want to go like, hey, guess what? I claimed on my insurance yesterday and the insurance paid for my new whatever. But when it goes wrong, people are more than happy to spend an hour down the pub slagging off the insurance company. I think that's probably what lies behind.
Excuse me, I don't think that's unique to the financial services category. We are much more inclined, aren't we, to talk very openly and directly to friends and family about the things that haven't gone so well. Yeah. Everyone loves a moan. I wonder if that's uniquely British or global. I think it's probably global, actually. People just, especially with social media, there's this idea that the way to get a response out of brands is to go complain on social because it's a public forum and then they will listen. And I think that can be a hurdle as well, especially when we start talking about storytelling, because it's such a good place to put the stories we tell. So that does bring us on quite nicely. Today, we're going to talk about 3 of the sort of pillars of what makes a credible brand: meaningful promises, authentic storytelling, and cultural contribution. Because for those watching at home, they're the ones that Barney and I felt would be the most appropriate for us to chat about on today's episode. So I want to start with meaningful promises.
Barney and I have actually talked about this a lot in a working context, but also just in general, in the occasional pub or cup of coffee type chat. This idea that brands need to make important promises in order to get noticed, but it's vital that those promises aren't just like a fait accompli that you can say, look, we're already doing that. They have to offer some kind of challenge back to the business. And Barney actually helped me shape our really sharp definition of that we use in all of our credibility audits and credibility workshops back when I was working on that a few years ago. So let's start with talk about meaningful promises. My first question for you is, obviously your, AXA's meaningful promise is all around this idea of know you can, which is your shorthand for helping give people confidence to progress in their lives. Can you tell us a bit about that, how it came about at AXA, and how it's evolved over the years? Because it's served you for quite some time now, actually.
Look, I think the first thing to say is it's a meaningful promise for us because I believe it's coming from a place that recognizes the meaningful role that we play in society and with our customers when we get things right, which is so often the case. As I sort of alluded to earlier, it's unfair, I think, to describe what we do as low interest. Protection fundamentally provides people and businesses with peace of mind, but that's the minimum that businesses and individuals are expecting of an insurer. What that also provides, however, peace of mind is the confidence to do the things that matter most to them. And that's what Know You Can is all really about. It's a bottling of that idea that with AXA, you can feel reassured and able to get on with driving your car, running your business, getting back to full health. So Know You Can sort of elevates what is arguably a category generic into something which is, for us, we believe, much more ownable about self-belief and the confidence that you can get from us.
Yeah, not an easy job to do for a portfolio brand. You guys have product which helps me as a small business owner, so AXA can do our public liability insurance, helps out insuring shoots and stuff. Cars, houses, huge corporates giving health insurance to employers, tiny one-man bands insuring, the kit in their van. I think you guys done particularly well to find something emotive and meaningful that can span all of that stuff.
It's not straightforward to deliver on that promise all of the time, every time. I mean, it isn't straightforward from anybody, frankly, but I think particularly for us, when working insurance is so rich with variety, young car drivers and somebody that is older, that is suffering from ill health, they have fundamentally different needs, but we need to show up consistently. That's what they expect after all. We need to recognize and service those distinct needs, but be proud of our breadth of expertise and show up as joined up as we can.
Yeah, confidence, of course, meaning very different things for those different people.
Yeah, it needs to stretch, but at its heart, fundamentally, the DNA of the promise absolutely needs to be felt and believed internally as well. The global dynamic is a really interesting one. Everything I've described at a local level, the breadth of product offering and service offering, the distinct consumer and audience needs, that's amplified when you look at what groups' expectations are of multiple entities. It's a service offering ultimately. We're not selling widgets. So, we need to identify a promise that has sufficient stretch, but, nevertheless, leveraging the power of the brand globally as well as locally. That's a really important thing for us to do, and it's something that we absolutely should be leveraging.
We've only really done the majority of our work for your UK team, but that does include Ireland as well. And even within that, like when we worked on health, I remember the difference between the health insurance consumer in the UK compared to Southern Ireland, where their version of the NHS is a vastly different proposition. The needs are so different. I think maybe it's just because it's hard. Know You Can is such a simple promise. It is, we just give you confidence. There's built-in flex into that. You can give confidence in so many different ways, but it still means something because you can go too bland when you go too broad if you're not careful. And I think you managed to avoid it.
I think sometimes a useful way to unpack what we mean by it is to think of the converse. Think about how consumers' audiences might feel if that weren't true. So indicating that we give people confidence might feel slightly too high altitude, right? Is that a reality? But if I were then to say, well, how might you feel about traveling, driving your car, living at home if you didn't have insurance? If you didn't have the cover, there's a legal responsibility in many instances for that to take place. But actually, I would argue that you would lack the sort of drive, the self-determination. You might just have one foot off the gas, sitting on one hand. You might not have the same drive to make the progress, do the things that you want to do that are frankly more important to you than insuring. But I think it's the presence of it that gives you an innate confidence. And it's about us sort of tapping into that and communicating it.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked before about doing that, but without hyperbolizing it to the point where you're saying we're so fundamental to everybody's lives, you wouldn't be able to achieve anything without us, which you see brands do all the time, overstate their importance in people's lives.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we know our place, particularly in the current climate. It's really important that we know our place. We cannot be seen to be tone deaf. We need to have some humility. And it's particularly the case when we talk about Liverpool and our activations and our relationship with them. We have to understand that we don't want to get in the way of people wanting to engage with their favourite thing, which is often football, and in this case, Liverpool Football Club. So we absolutely have to know our place. And, I'm a big fan of being bold and being insight-led, but also having a humility. And I think it's an awful lot of what we've done, which is evidence of that.
I love that word, humility. I've used it occasionally myself with clients. I think that when I talk about delivering brand experience, you have to, start from an understanding of how potentially smaller part of the consumer's life you are to begin with, in order to understand their frame of reference for what their expectations are from a big experience. But you just made me think that that's just as relevant to the big promise we make as a brand level and the product promises we make as well. Like, overstating might sound good in the moment, but it unravels very quickly if a customer scratches beneath the surface. And so I think that's really interesting. And you segued us quite nicely, I think, into our second topic around making a cultural contribution, because you mentioned Liverpool FC, and you've just renewed, obviously, your relationship with them. And what I love is deepened it. I've seen it go from, I might get the order of this wrong, Barney, you can correct me, but first training sort of kit sponsor, and then training ground sponsor, and getting more involved with women's team. And it's grown in tenure, but also in depth of involvement with Liverpool FC. And I think I'd love you to talk about that, because when I talk about brands making a good cultural contribution, we talk about how there has to be commitment involved for a long term, and also has to involve a depth of understanding. So tell us a little bit about that partnership and what we're unlocking there.
So we were right. Since 2019, we've been the official insurance partner, and that has elevated to become the official training partner. And we've got naming rights of the training centre, the actual training centre. Our partnership with Liverpool gives us really significant visibility. But, that visibility means absolutely zilch without attaching it to something meaningful. We need to be able to attach that heightened awareness to a memorable and emotional connection. Very few people are at home waiting for AXA to communicate, particularly post-purchase and pre-claim. But our relationship with Liverpool enables us to engage with fans on their terms. But it has to be handled right, going back to my point previously about just knowing our place. I don't think there's ever a situation where we want to hang on Liverpool's coattails, in so much that we don't believe that we have a role to play. It's about finding that meaningful role. But equally, we don't want to be ahead of Liverpool. At the end of the day, fans are going to want to engage with the Liverpool content first and foremost. We need to make sure that we're showing up in a way that is sort of additive.
That's a really good chart. I mean, I always remember the turn of phrase you used, which is that we've got to come from where the fans are when we're talking about Liverpool FC. And so,
yeah, we've got to bring something to our audiences. I think if we just show up and just try and benefit from the added eyeballs, that's just not going to occupy any sort of real estate in people's minds. We could just be there to entertain. But I think what we've been able to do is identify a role that we can play. And I think being the training partner is quite a meaningful one. And particularly that we've got the naming rights. There's a very tangible, concrete, literally presence that we have, that we're able to demonstrate, again, the value that we're adding to the football team off the pitch, and by extension, therefore, to the fans. Knowing our place and showing up in a way that's additive, but also engaging the core audience and being confident enough to do that is really important. We've been unapologetic about saying we've got to do all of those things in a way that talks to the core Liverpool fan. And that therefore needs to be handled really sensibly.
I guess we've talked about this before as well, how training and confidence are linked things from a football point of view. But also a life point of view, where as we practice, we improve our confidence in whatever field it is. So there's a really fertile creative territory there. And maybe you can talk about some of the nice ways you have activated You Can and the Liverpool FC partnership over the last few years.
Yeah, there's been a few that come to mind. I mean, one of the very first ones we did was something called Head Coaches. We've got an incredibly strong and proud AXA Health business, and Liverpool have a foundation, and they do a huge amount of really incredible outreach into the local community. And what we were able to do was use our expertise, our mental health counselling expertise, to train those volunteers so they could spot, the early signs, the first signs of sort of mental ill health, particularly amongst a younger generation. And that was really empowering for the Liverpool Foundation. They got a huge amount out of that. And it was a sort of a genuine meeting of minds. There was a proper value exchange. We were enabling and empowering Liverpool Football Club Foundation volunteers, and the AXA brand had a presence at scale, but in a really meaningful way. More recently, quite a shift in tone. You did some wonderful work with us last summer, where we quote unquote pranked a couple of players. I mean, we pretended to two of them, one of the players who was in on it, that we wanted them to film a car insurance ad, and it just worked brilliantly. I mean, you'll know, Rob, that so often the content you're producing, you cannot really predict the degree to which it will work. There's a sort of an alchemy about content, and everything just clicked. The interaction between the players worked, the prank worked, and it was just a really effervescent piece of content that really came alive on camera. And as a result, it got a huge amount of traction. So we do all sorts. We do content that is designed purely to entertain, but we are still attempting to show we're providing a meaningful role. And in other instances, it might be a slightly more purpose-led activation. But nevertheless, we're very keen to be consistent and have the instilling of confidence at the heart of the communication.
I think both the two examples you mentioned, they do exhibit how close the relationship is between AXA and LFC. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was in on the prank and had pre-briefed. And the fans, you understand that actually, there is a relationship behind the scenes here that's working. And similarly with head coaches, and arguably much more meaningfully, like you say, with Frank, it's hilarious. It gets all the views, and you're right. So many things clicked. I think I talking to Will about this at our end, who heads up our content team. He was, we were very lucky to get Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's a bit of a joker, in on it, and Divock Origi, who's just heart of gold, sort of one of the, I guess, cult heroes of Liverpool fans rather than sort of out and out legend hero.
Yeah.
And his reaction that we got on set, where he stands up for someone who he thinks is a fan, who's being mistreated by a fake director, it's amazing. And it speaks to confidence, and it speaks to the ability to stand up for yourself. And I think what you're seeing even in just those two examples, like you say, there's very different ways of activating a partnership. But then it's not surprising that they're the two that probably did take the most collaboration between yourselves and Liverpool FC. They were incredibly trusting of us to talk them through a shoot that was not scripted and could not be scripted in that particular instance. We're going to turn up on set, there'll be a fake director here, some hidden director in a room upstairs, and we're going to push the players until one of them loses their shit a bit. I mean, for them to say, yes, that's okay, I think spoke a lot about the trust we had managed to earn with them. And it does show in the quality of the content.
Yeah, but I think you're underselling how hard we and you guys worked to instill confidence in the Liverpool team about our intentions for that shoot. But you can never predict how it's going to go on the day. I mean, rarely can you with most productions, but it just had a combination of ingredients that absolutely worked. But yeah, we do have a really good relationship with Liverpool, where they're very frank and honest with us, which we welcome, about our intentions and whether things are going to work or not.
Great. Well, the third thing we wanted to talk about was storytelling, and both of those examples lead us quite nicely into that. So talking about authentic storytelling for a minute, and again, something I know is really close to your heart. You talked about humility earlier, and I think that's very closely related to authenticity. How good are you guys at your storytelling and staying authentic? And I'm thinking specifically about, I love the stuff you've been doing above line with the guys at Leo's on Future You, the second or 2.5 or third, depending on how you're counting it, iteration of that campaign now. Tell us about that.
Storytelling, generally, some of the things that we do are just extraordinary. The help that we provide. And I think we just need to find a way to amplify those messages and find a rightful home for them. Awareness of the AXA brand in and of itself is not an issue, particularly in the B2B space, but connecting that visibility, the sort of inherent awareness that people have of AXA, to customer testimonials, positive case studies from individuals and businesses is something that we do, but I think we can and the industry can do more of, just to offset some of the negative perceptions that can occasionally exist.
Yeah, that's interesting. Going full circle to the perception of the category that we talked about at the start. But not even just insurance or even financial services. I think brands are traditionally better at doing top-down storytelling, brand-down storytelling, and less like customer success story-up storytelling. I do really like the idea of more ground-up storytelling, more of the simple stuff, more of the happy customer stories, and that can probably go for anybody watching.
I think we could do a bit more of it. We've got some fantastic stories that we can tell. It's about finding the right home for them and doing it in a way that is useful. Ultimately, there's a balance between sharing successes, but not making it feel like we are beating our own chest, blowing our own trumpet. We do some amazing things, but it needs to be handled sensibly.
One of the things we do when we do credibility audit of brands is we always just go and look at the review websites like Trustpilot and stuff like that. And obviously, it's inherently nearly always a mixed bag, but most brands, people are working hard to deliver good service for customers, and those scores are quite high, right? Like, 3.5 to 5, depending, where you're at. Well, no one gets a 5, 3.5 to 4.5, let's say. The thing I noticed with it is that I think some brands are good at just asking for reviews off of happy customers so they can skew their score. So you got to take a little pinch of salt. But then every brand has its advocates that are really, really, really into what they've done. And I wonder actually whether or not those platforms should allow people to create content rather than just a star rating and a paragraph, which seems to be the default.
We would need to complement all of the stories of the positive help that we provided. It needs to be tethered to the ways that we can continue to help, because that's what we're in the business of doing is protection and prevention. Tethering those stories to a reminder of the ways in which we can help is really important. Otherwise, if it's too self-congratulatory, it'll be really defeatist.
It's given me an idea, that whole conversation, though. I definitely should get in touch with Trustpilot, FIFA, and see if somebody wants to come on the podcast from those platforms, and because they're playing a role in brand credibility, as we know, in that consideration phase, people are going and checking out those brands. Okay, I guess before we run out of time, because it's been lovely chatting to you, the second part of good authentic storytelling, where I think brands have area to gain, is planning those narratives over time. On the one hand, we have social media and everyone thinks reactive is amazing. And it is. You can take advantage of everything from a small meme to a general election. That works. But there should be some tie-in, right, to the longer term narrative that the brand is trying to tell. And, I've seen you evolve how you guys do that over the past couple of years. Is that something that you're looking to push moving forward? And any tips for people looking to do the same?
It's about striking the right balance between absolutely having a plan and staying true to the story that you want to tell, staying true to your promise, being bold about it, but being as authentic as you possibly can, having some humility, knowing your place, but also recognizing that there are moments that you can't predict. There's a requirement to be reactive. And so we absolutely do have a plan 12 to 18 months out. We know what the big ticket things are that we might want to say, but there are things that might occur next week we're going to have to respond to. But, the beauty of having a clearly articulated purpose is that it provides that gravitational pull. It's an editing pencil that allows us at short notice to define the best way to respond in those moments. So yeah, it's about striking the right balance. Yeah.
Just as you were speaking, I was thinking as well that making sure you have a feedback loop to how prior content has been received to inform your next chapter. You guys did, you run brand trackers and do social media reporting internally, and you learn about that stuff. So, even the recent pivot towards talking a bit more about the few key types of insurance that we really want customers to understand that we do is because we're informed about how well people know that we are insurance, but there is this little knowledge gap here. I think that, all brands could do well at that.
Well, I think that's for us that, nobody has a divine right to continue to be a strong brand. It's the wrong place to be to get into a situation where you can assume that without investment, without storytelling, that your brand will continue to be a salient one, a relevant one. And I've made references on a couple of occasions. Awareness of the brand is not necessarily an issue, but connecting that to something meaningful. Okay, I'm familiar with the name, but remind me what you do. Tell me what you do. Tell me why you're relevant. I think is super important. And so I'm not telling you anything new. There's not a great revelation there. But I think the risk is, cruising and not asking those tough questions about how people are perceiving you and whether or not your brand is relevant. And you really need to understand the meaningful role that you are playing for them in a way that you're hearing from the outside in. You might have a view internally, but you've got to sort of cross-reference that from the people that really matter. And that's, of course, our customers.
Yeah, that's spot on. And, one of the categories I noticed that does this fairly badly is a lot of people in the tech world where they have a very fast evolving product can't wait to tell the next bit of their journey. And actually they've been successful because they told a really good story about their first bit of their journey, the cool new tech. But they're always adding new functionality, and they get into this rut of, we'll just add a new piece of functionality and tell a new thing, and that will make us grow. But you left the customer behind ages ago, and they're still catching up with all this new stuff. And actually, they need reminding of the whole reason you exist in the first place again. I can't say who it is, but we're talking to a cool financial services brand who I want to talk to about that particular issue right now, because I think they've done loads of new cool stuff, but it's just not, the market isn't ready to hear about that stuff yet. Okay, well, I think that we're fairly out of time. I think it's really, really nice, insightful discussion. I really like, a few key themes coming through. The humility with which, well, frankly, you approach the role that you have, but also your belief in how important it is that brands do that is a really nice reminder to get, especially from such a big, shiny, famous brand as AXA. So I'll be holding on to that moving forward. And just all that remains is to thank you, Barney, for your time. Pleasure talking to you as usual. And thanks very much.
My pleasure.
And the masters of credibility.